Thanks a lot for your introduction. So before we start, I just want to let you know that I created a poll on the website, so you can answer to it live during my presentation. That would be quite a useful input for questions at the end. So thanks a lot for joining today. I want to speak to you about proper practices in terms of project schedule. I'm a consultant in project management and project control. And I am amazed at how many projects I can review or look at which don't have a proper project schedule. And then the organizations who are trying to implement those projects are kind of surprised when their projects are failing. So what I want to share with you today, basically, is some basic principles about having schedules which are workable for projects. I want to highlight that project failure is often not a surprise. And when I do project reviews, very often, the condition of the schedule we find can only forecast that the project is going to fail. It's amazing how many projects operate without a proper integrated project schedule. That means a schedule where you have all the disciplines and activities which you have to do for your project. And we find schedules with inadequate levels of detail, lacking the full coverage of the project scope. That happens very often, and also improper linkage and build-up. So in this presentation, I only got 30 minutes. I cannot cover everything, of course, but I want to share with you two key elements which are essential, both for the project manager and the project control manager. So we are not speaking here about scheduling techniques or details. It's more looking at the strategic approach of scheduling for a project. So I want to share with you a proper schedule hierarchy and how to have the best integrated project schedule for your project. And I'm going to share with you some amazing principles you will see. And how to quickly check whether the project schedule you are using is of a proper technical quality. It's also amazing how many project schedules we can see that are not properly linked. They look very nice, they have nice colors. But actually they don't work. You cannot operate them during project execution because they are not linked properly. So quickly, the structure of the presentation. I'm just going to give you a short introduction of my consulting company, just to give you an idea of where I am coming from and which types of project I'm addressing in terms of experience. And you will see it's pretty wide. However, it's mainly focused on large industrial projects, say above 50 to 100 million US. That's going to be quite short. And after, we'll dwell a little bit into basic and advanced concepts of schedule hierarchy. And I'm going to talk to you also quite quickly about integrated project schedule, technical quality, and how today there are some norms and methods that allow you to check very quickly whether the schedule you have in your hands is of a proper quality and can be used. Okay, very quickly, project value delivery, we are a niche concept. When we are not locked down as now. And we are a small, high-impact team of experienced project specialists. We don't take operational positions, but we advise and we help in transforming organizations. So just a glimpse on the industries we are active in. And the principles I'm going to share with you are actually applicable to any kind of industry. In terms of product management and product control, everyone believes that they are working in a very special industry, but actually it's not the case. Of course, the technicalities might change, but the principles are the same. Just for the record, I put some of our clients. And I just want to mention that we are working very globally. So we have, I think, quite a very good picture of what's happening in many places in the world in terms of product management. Okay, let's move to the first topic, which is basic and advanced concepts of schedule hierarchy. First, I want to share with you some real-world stuff I've heard from some project directors. For example, once we did a review of, I think it was like $1 billion US project. And the project director told us, well, I haven't looked at the project schedule for 6 months anyway. I can't understand it. There are too many activities. I can't use it. Come on, you're the project director. How can you drive your project if you don't know what is in your schedule? Another very common remark we get is, and you all probably going to recognize it from your experience. Well, you know, we can't really show what's happening in the schedule because then the client would know it. Okay, that's for the contractor. When you are an owner, then the shareholder would know about it. It's also, you can't have a project. I have to ask the question, how are you taking decisions? Is that the way you're driving your project, with your hand in front of your eyes and just hoping that you're going to land properly? When I do introductions or trainings about project control, to make it simple, but it's quite powerful, I tend to use this comparison with navigation. When you have started a sea voyage and you are right in the middle of the ocean and you are navigating, you have to ask yourself 3 questions, one after the other in succession. The first question you have to ask yourself is where I am right now. Am I on course? Okay, what is my position right now? You need to know where you are right now in order to decide where you want to go. That's a prerequisite. However, I find quite consistently that a number of projects are not quite clear about their current situation. So when it's about scheduling, it's about what's the current progress. But when it's about cost, it's about what is the actual cost I spent to date. I would say about 50% of the projects I have seen in my experience can't really answer accurately the first question, where are we right now? Now, once you have answered this question, provided you can do that, then you can look at where you are going if you are following the current trends, okay? Well, I know where I am. I'm looking at the current trends. I'm deciding where I am going. And once you have answered the second question, which is forecasting, then you can look at whether you're going in the right direction or you're going to reach your destination. And if it's not the case, then you can decide to change something to go back on course. What's very powerful in those questions is that they are pretty basic, but they have to be addressed in terms of schedule management. So where are we is basically knowing what is the current progress to date. Where are we going is all about forecasting based on what I know and the events which have happened and the productivities I have observed. Where am I going in terms of project? And then the last question is, what do I need to do to recover? And you know, if you don't want to look ridiculous, it's quite better to know where you're heading. So why do you need to check whether the schedule is healthy in a project? Pretty clear for me that to be able to take the right decisions, that is to say, to drive your project, you need to have a proper schedule, and it has a number of properties. The first thing is that it needs to be properly built in terms of linkages. It needs to cover the entire scope. That's very important, in particular for owners. They tend to forget quite a lot of scope related to the project, like, for example, getting the future operator involved, or everything which is related to licensing. It needs to be properly linked between the various disciplines all over the value chain, from engineering to procurement to construction to commissioning. And it needs to have a minimum of artificial constraints. It's very important that in terms of leadership, the project manager, project director, and the project control manager don't let the planner by himself or herself when building up the schedule. Because there are quite a number of strategic components which need to get into this schedule. In addition, the project director or the project control manager need to be able to understand whether the schedule they are using is reliable and accurate. So we don't ask them to be, of course, as competent as planners, but they need to be able to judge very quickly whether the schedule they get is correct. So they need to have a minimum familiarity with scheduling tools, and they need to have a few rules of thumb or heuristics to check the quality of what they are given. So up to now, I've been very general, and now I'm going to go a bit more in detail in the specifics. And here it's where you are probably going to get surprised in what I'm going to say. I love this quote from Eisenhower, who said, "In preparing for battle, I have always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable." What is basically saying that in the fog of war, like when you are starting a project, we all know that what's going to happen in the project is not what is in the plan. Things are going to happen which we cannot anticipate. Therefore, it is extremely important that your schedule has a sound baseline with the right scope and everything and is well thought out, that you have gone through the planning process. But at the same time, you need to be able to remain agile and flexible. And this is essential because, as I'm going to discuss, too many projects, and in particular large projects, have schedules which are so huge that they are not flexible anymore. Just to give you some illustrations of unexpected things which happen in projects, I like to share a few pictures. So this is what happens to a reactor for a chemical plant during logistics. This is another project where your FPSO worth a few $100 million, somebody forgot to close the valve and something went wrong. So unexpected things are happening every day in projects. What can we observe in many organizations? Schedules which are typically very large, more than 5,000 activities. I think the record for me up to now is for a nuclear power plant, a fully linked level 2 schedule with 100,000 activities, and you need 7 signatures to change a link. But it's not uncommon to see level 2 or level 3 schedules, so schedules which are fully linked and which are being used as a baseline against which the project is controlled, having typically 15,000, 25,000 activities. And in addition, we see that those schedules have got strong technical weaknesses, activity links which are not consistent, no critical path, too many links which are difficult to manage, like start and finish, resourcing not consistent, mistakes, inconsistent level of details between each phase, engineering, procurement, construction, installation, commissioning. Now, what I'm sharing with you right now is very important. In this curve, I've tried to represent on one side the detail of the schedule from the left to the right, and on the other dimension, the effectiveness of the schedule. Now, we all know that if our schedule is not detailed enough, first, it's probably going to be much too optimistic. And also, you will not be able to understand what is really driving your schedule. So you need to have a minimum level of detail in your schedule to be able to properly model or represent what's going to happen in the project. I think everybody understands that. What too many people don't understand is that there is also a very significant drawback to putting too much detail in your schedule. It's going to drown the team and removing the agility. And we all know that the project is not going to happen as per the plan. I can bet with you that if you have a schedule with like 20,000 activities, if I'm going to look into it in detail, a large number of the links and activities are going to be wrong. The planner is going to spend the entire time just trying to fix it and update it and won't have any time for analysis or for forecasting or proper forecasting or for asking questions. So there is kind of an optimal detail range where the schedule is detailed enough to understand what is driving the project, and at the same time is not too detailed so that you keep the agility and you're able to understand what's really happening in the project. Now, where you may be surprised is when I tell you what I think should be the right level of detail for this schedule. And here I'm speaking of the integrated project schedule. I think it's not reasonable that it is more than 1,500 to 2,500 activities, depending on project complexity, and that's irrespective of the project total size. I know of 20 billion US dollar projects where the integrated project schedule is less than 4,000 activities. Okay, so I'm just counting the number of activities. You can add the number of milestones, of course. Now you're going to tell me, look, I got this large project. I cannot put all the details I need in 1,500 to 2,500 activities. So I cannot put all the details I need to give to everybody on the ground to do their work. Of course, you need to have very detailed schedules for engineering, step by step. Of course, you need to have detailed procurement registers for the hundreds of packages you have to buy with all the dates. Of course, you need to have very detailed construction schedules. My point is, don't try to cram everything into one single schedule. This is not effective. So what is the solution? The solution is having a proper schedule hierarchy, a proper schedule architecture. I'm going to show you just now. And this works whatever the size and complexity of the project. And this needs to be thought about before you set up your scheduling environment. You want to have this integrated master schedule or integrated product schedule at the center, which is a fully linked schedule, the topmost, with 1,500 to 2,500 activities. You may have above that some management schedules not linked, as we usually call the level 1, level 2 schedules. And below that, you will have all sorts of detailed registers or schedules with the right detail for the people to do their work on the ground. You may also want to have a simplified project schedule which is fully linked and which you're going to use both for scenario planning and also for schedule risk analysis, for which you need to have a simplified schedule with 200 to 400 activities. That's the concept of the schedule hierarchy. It works the same for an owner. Even an owner on a very large project with many contractors, you still want to have your integrated master schedule with a limited level of complication, your management level schedules. And below that, you may have more detailed contractor schedules, which themselves will have another hierarchy with, at the bottom, discipline-specific, very detailed schedules. Not to forget that the owner will have also its own scope, that's too often forgotten, which may also have more detailed schedules in the hierarchy. finally the simplified project schedule. So this concept of schedule hierarchy is very important. We see too many projects which try to put everything in one single schedule. This is not going to work. You need to have schedules which are of the proper quality and which are workable, which people can really use to take decisions. The only way, when you are in a large enough project, is to split the schedule information into several layers with a hierarchy, and your integrated master schedule, which is bringing together all the various disciplines, need to have a limited complication. So of course, once we have said that we wanted to have a hierarchy, there is some work to be done to maintain consistency between the different schedule levels. So that's generally done by the project scheduling team under the leadership of the lead planner. There are different possible organizations, but the typical ones are either all schedules in the project are produced by someone from the planning team. And I've seen very large projects having 50, 60 planners working at different levels in the hierarchy and making sure that the levels are all consistent. Or you can allow also at the bottom of the hierarchy, field engineers, construction and operations manager working on generally it's Microsoft project schedules with a structure being given by the planning team, making sure that the information flows consistently into the hierarchy. The last part I want to share with you on this first glimpse is when we speak about integrated project schedule, it's very important that this schedule is balanced between the various disciplines. Because otherwise, it's quite obvious that you're not modeling properly the linkages between the different steps of engineering, procurement, construction, commissioning. The only way, and since this schedule is focused on those links between the disciplines, you need to make sure there is a proper balance. So here I gave you two real-life examples. And it's quite interesting when you look at schedules which are given to you, because you can often infer what is the origin of the organization which produced the schedule. So for example, in contractor A, it's quite obvious that it's an offshore operation outfit which went into EPCI. But of course, the planners are more interested historically by all the details of offshore operations. So they are just adding a little bit of engineering and procurement on the side. That's wrong, because obviously the full chain, EPC chain, is not well modeled. And the contractor B, you can also infer that it's probably an engineering outfit which developed into an EPCI contractor. And the one activity for commissioning is actually a project buffer of exactly 1 year, which is just used there to manage the schedule and the expectations. Okay, just as a summary of this first part on the level of detail you want into the integrated project schedule. For me, it's really essential that there is enough focus and attention given to the quality of the schedule and that you are taking decisions on the schedule when you are doing a project. So this integrated project schedule needs to meet a number of requirements. It needs to be balanced. It needs to cover all the scope. It needs to be focused on those interfaces between disciplines, and the complication needs to be limited. And I'm sure quite a lot of you will have been quite astonished by this limitation in size, which I just gave you, 1,500 to 2,500 activities. And once you decide to do this, then the only way to have all the information you need for your project at all levels is to implement a schedule hierarchy to cover all the levels of scheduling you need. Okay, let me move on to the second topic I wanted to share with you in the same order of idea. It's amazing the number of project schedules we can see, which are not adequate from just a technical schedule perspective. So the question is, okay, I am given a schedule by my scheduling team. How can I very quickly, in less than 10 minutes, know whether this schedule is properly built or whether it's just crap? And as I'm going to show you, it's actually pretty easy. When I give this talk or the training, the more detailed training I often give on scheduling, I must say the planners are often not happy with me because it puts a much higher expectation on them. But I think it's really essential if we want to have more projects being successful. All right, so what can I check in a schedule from the technical perspective? There are two different levels. As I'm going to show you, there's already a lot of things I can check on the PDF printout. I don't need to go into the software, the scheduling software, to look at everything. Just by making sure that the PDF printout obeys to certain requirements, I'm going to show you just now, I can very easily see what is the quality of the schedule and of its linkage. And then, of course, I can go deeper into the original schedule file. So what do I want to see on the PDF printout? The first thing is I want to see a critical path. I'm sure you find that a bit excessive, but I can tell you a lot of actual project schedules don't show any critical path or too many critical paths. Then the second thing I want to see, and that's a very essential parameter, I want to see the total finish float for each activity. What is the total finish float? Is actually the amount of time you can delay this task without impacting the end date of the project. So if I am on the critical path, to put it roughly, my total finish float should be 0. If my total finish float is negative, it means that I'm late. And if my total finish float is positive, it means that I have a little bit of flexibility. I can be a little bit late on this task without impacting my finish date. Now, if the schedule is not properly linked, those total finish float values, which are actually calculated by the scheduling software, are going to be stupid. That is to say, you're going to have a lot of total finish float values, which are going to be above 100, 200, 300 days, which is meaningless. I mean, if you are doing a project on a schedule, generally you don't have so much time. And it's just because if an activity or a succession of activity is not properly linked to the end date of the project, the software is going to calculate the total finish float as a difference between the finish date of the activity and the finish date of the model. And actually, it gives a kind of a stupid answer. So if too many of those total finish float values are above 50 or 100 days, you know very quickly, at a glimpse, that there are linkage problems in your schedule. Then, of course, you obviously want to see the baseline versus the update, and you want to check that your integrated product schedule is actually balanced between the disciplines. If you have 200 pages of engineering and 1 page of construction, you know that there is a problem. If you want to go further, and I'm going to show you also some demonstration or examples after, if you want to go to the software, actually, I'm going to give you some rule of thumb, and also you want to check whether the schedule is coded properly. So let me start with the schedule printout. This is an example of a printout from a software. It doesn't really matter which scheduling software. What do I want to see, or what are the requirements I'm going to give to my planner for those printouts? As you can see, I want to see the visible critical path. I want to know what was the baseline so that I can see how things have moved. A number of projects don't want to show it because they find it not so nice, but it's important to see how you have drifted compared to the baseline. You also want to see if there are constraints in the schedule. In general, you don't want to have a lot of constraints in a schedule, so they are visible. The way they are shown are different for each scheduling software. So here on this one, it puts a little eye on the representation. If you go to Primavera, it's like a star next to the date. If you go to project, it shows there is a column which shows where your constraints are. It's quite important that constraints are visible. And if you see too many of them in the schedule, you have a problem. And finally, as I said, you want to have this total float column visible. It doesn't take more than 2 seconds for your planner to put it on the printout. It should be a standard on the printout. And if you see values which are too many values in excess of 50 to 100 days, you know you have a problem. If that happens, quite possible you have linkages which are not adequate. It means that the critical path you see may not be the real critical path, so you need to be really careful about it. And you need to look if there are some visible constraints which are creating stupid values in terms of float. So really, I can only encourage you to put this total float column in your printouts. Now, if I'm moving to the schedule source file, there are quite a few rules of thumb, but there is one I want to share with you. It's not being seen a lot in the literature, which is a level of linkage. So the rule of thumb I'm just going to give you is my personal one, based on experience. It's only valid for execution phase schedules only, okay? It's not applicable, for example, for tender phase or definition phase schedules. Here we are for execution phase schedules. And integrated project schedules as well. And integrated project schedules, we want the number of links to be between 1.5 and 2.2 times the number of activities. If you take a construction schedule, for example, it's generally going to be very linear, very detailed, very linear, and this ratio is going to be close to 1, which is okay for a construction schedule. But here we are speaking of an integrated project schedule, which is supposed to have modeled all the intricacies of the links between engineering, procurement, construction, commissioning. And on average, you need to have quite a few more links than just 1-to-1. We also don't want to have a ratio which is too high, because if the ratio of links divided by the number of activities is more than 2.2 or 2.5, it means that your schedule is extremely constrained, and any delay in anything is going to create a delay on the entire project. And if that's the case, that's something you need to look at, and it's probably not realistic physically either. So we find that this is quite a good rule of thumb, which really applies well and gives us very quickly, because it's just based on the general statistics of the schedule, gives us very quickly a good guess of the proper linkage in the schedule. Of course, those rules of thumb I gave you, there are also some more general rules which are available. And in the US, they created a framework which is called the DCMA framework, Defense Contract Management Agency. You can look on the internet. There is a document which, with all those criteria. Basically, the Defense Contract Management Agency was getting annoyed by having poor quality schedules from their contractors, and they said at some stage, okay, I'm going to very American way, I'm going to create some criteria, and if you miss those criteria, your schedule is not accepted. I'm not going to go into detail in the criteria. You can refer here to the slide, or you can refer to the original document. More and more schedule softwares have a way to check those criteria and produce some reports. There are some add-ons, very cheap add-ons on Microsoft projects, for example, and it's increasingly being used by owners to check the quality of the schedules of their contractors. So you should be wary that more and more people are going to check the quality of whatever schedule you produce based on those criteria. Just some examples. It asks that in terms of types of links, finish to start links represent more than 90% of the links, that there are less than 5% of hard constraints, that less than 5% of the activities have a float over 2 months. So here we find the criteria on the total float I just mentioned before, etc., etc. I share with you some additional criteria, and here you can find the reference of the document. Just type the reference and you'll find the document on the internet. They also don't want to have tasks with more than 10 predecessors or more than 10 successors. So here I give you an example of an actual analysis of a schedule. That's an example of the output of an add-on from a Microsoft project, for example. And you can see instantly, I can see whether there are problems. And if I click on the detail, I also get all the activities which have a problem. Of course, in addition to what I just said, you need to have a look at the realism in terms of resources. That's particularly important for large projects. I don't want to go into the details. You need to look at the overall resource level, the density or the congestion of resources working on some areas. And also you need to look at the curve or the ratio of mobilization or demobilization, which should not exceed like 15% of your target. It's also important that you do resource leveling manually as much as possible. I've seen a lot of problems in projects having doing resource leveling automatically, and this created instabilities in the dates of the updates of the schedule. So please don't do that. Any resource leveling needs to be done manually. The algorithms which are doing that automatically, they're not the same for each software, and they're not going to provide you with the best solution. They don't take into account criticality in particular. Okay, just as a summary for this part, just wanted to show you that even having a deep scheduling experience, it's very easy to know what's the quality of the schedule which is given to you by your planning team. And thus, you can drive a high level of expectations with the scheduling team. And more, we will see spreading worldwide automated checks of schedules using, for example, DCMA checks. And if you're not ready for this kind of checks, you're going to see your schedules being rejected by your favorite client or owner or shareholder. So that's something I really encourage you to know more about, learn about it, and implement those checks systematically when you produce a schedule before submitting it to another party. Okay, just as a conclusion, just want to share with you some takeaways. It's really essential to have your integrated project schedule. It needs to respond to some basic quality features like being balanced between disciplines, covering your entire scope. You don't need to be a super specialist in scheduling to know whether the schedule is of the right quality or not. And the most important in all projects is that things are going to happen which you cannot anticipate. So you need to be remaining flexible and agile with not too many details. And it's not because you are putting more details in your schedule that it's going to be better. With some colleagues, we've produced a number of books. There is one about scheduling. There are quite a number of on other project control disciplines. Details, everything I just explained and more. I really encourage you to get more information about checking the quality of schedules and making sure that the schedules you are spending so much time and effort producing are actually being used by your project directors to take the right decisions for your project. Thanks a lot. I guess I'll leave it open now for questions. Okay, so I see 2 questions. Why would you have the high-level schedule not linked to detailed schedules? It can be easily set up and you will have it in one schedule view, one database, and consistent. Okay. I fully agree. We can at least semi-automate the linkages between the schedules. And it makes it easier for updates. And I encourage that. Now, I don't necessarily encourage the full automation. And the reason is just to make sure that the quality of the data and the hygiene of the data is being maintained. Because the lower level schedules may be updated by people who are not scheduling specialists, I prefer to have some checks on balances when getting the information up in the hierarchy into the higher level schedules. So I really encourage automation in the sense of making sure you don't have to type in the data and you can recover the data. But generally, I recommend that there is some kind of a check before you insert the data from a lower schedule into a higher schedule, just to make sure that the quality of the data is there. I see another question about resource scheduling. Could be made manually. So as I said, resource leveling is kind of an optimization. It's using a number of algorithm. Each software will have its own algorithm, and the point is those algorithms are not really taking into account the criticality of the tasks. So if you let it work out, it will leverage the schedule, it will leverage resources, so it will lengthen the schedule, but you will not necessarily prioritize those activities which are critical or more important for your schedule. So I really prefer that you understand what is getting leveled, and by doing it manually, you're sure that you are still prioritizing what are really the most important tasks for your project. Okay, I see another question. How important is a comprehensible schedule to understand change management? Well, I think that's also an excellent question. If we want to understand, so understanding a change management, you need to understand the impact of a change on quite a number of dimensions, not just schedule. Of course, cost, whether it puts into question engineering and stuff. But if you want to check what is the impact on the schedule dimension, it's better to have a schedule of the proper quality so that when you inject the change into the schedule, you can understand what is happening in your schedule. And actually, it's quite essential as well if you are in a claim situation. So what we really recommend is, if you can, even to use a simplified project schedule when it's a major change, of course. When it's a major change, use the most simplified linked schedule you have to assess and to communicate on the possible impact of the change. And in particular, if you have to create a file for a claim or for arbitration or for extension of time, that's really essential. Okay, any more question? Don't hesitate. Let me see the poll. Okay, the poll result, I got 42% less than 1,000 activities, 33% between 1,000 and 3,000, and then 8% for each category above. So that's good. It's not representative of what I see in large projects, though, but means that you've already agreed with what I wanted to say in terms of the size of schedules. So please make sure that your schedules remain under control and you don't overblow it with detail. And if you've got a large project, create this schedule hierarchy. That's really what's important. I got another question. 2 minutes left. Have you ever tried to combine CPM scheduling with lean construction principles like Last Planner? If so, was it successful? Yes, I've seen it being done. Generally, it's done in situations where you implement a lot of visual management in collaborative spaces. It was successful, and again, the fact that your standard schedule is of a limited complication does help implementing those more detailed aspects on the lower level activities like Last Planner. Any more questions? Well, if it's not the case, then I wish you all the best for this day, and I hope you enjoyed the other presentations on the expo. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jeremy, for this amazing session.
Thank you. You, Sanket. Have a nice day.
You too.